I never imagined the quietest homecoming of my life would be the one that shook me to my core. 2 weeks away didn't seem like much. Just a short fishing trip up near Pinecrest Lake with an old friend I hadn't seen in years. The kind of trip where time slows, conversations stretch, and mornings smell like frost and campfire smoke. I came back tired, sure, but content. Ready for familiar walls and old routines. My boots hit the front porch and I paused, breathing in the autumn air. The wind carried the scent of damp leaves and chimney smoke, the kind that always reminded me of my late wife, Margaret, and the way she used to hum while sweeping the porch. This house, our house, wasn't just wood and windows. I built it from the ground up after she passed, pouring every ache and memory into its beams. It was supposed to be a place where family always had a home. Promise I vowed never to break. So when my son Ethan and his wife Jasmine asked to move in temporarily 3 years ago, I didn't hesitate. Temporary was supposed to mean 6 months, maybe a year. But grief has a way of making a man welcome noise instead of silence, and I didn't mind the company back then. First, it felt right. Ethan and I had coffee on the porch some mornings, reminiscing about fishing trips and the time he broke the living room lamp playing baseball indoors. Jasmine baked muffins once in a while, always making too much and laughing as she brought over the extra. Little things, warm things, things that made the house breathe again. But slowly, almost so gently I didn't notice at first, the ground shifted. They rearranged furniture, brought in their decor, repainted the living room without asking. Jasmine had a way of speaking like decisions were already made, and Ethan, he never liked conflict. Instead of talking, he'd rub the back of his neck and say, "Dad, it's just decor." I let it go, for the sake of peace, for the illusion of togetherness, for the hope that maybe family could feel whole again. So when I walked into my house that morning, bag still in hand, I expected warmth, maybe even a welcome home. Instead, I stepped into silence so thick it prickled the air. The smell hit first. Fresh paint, floral perfume, something sterile that didn't belong. My heart slowed, heavy in my chest. Where were the framed pictures that lined the front hallway? The ones of Margaret smiling in her Sunday dress, of Ethan as a toddler wearing my fishing hat crooked? Gone. My pulse quickened. I walked through the living room. New rugs, new furniture, couch I had never seen. The oak coffee table I carved by hand, gone. My fingers twitched. I tried to call out, but the words sank somewhere deep. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and every step made the truth clearer. Then I reached my bedroom doorway. No, not my bedroom anymore. The bed Margaret and I shared, the one with carvings I made on the headboard during harder times, was gone, replaced by a sleek modern frame piled with designer pillows. My walls, once painted the soft warm beige she loved, were now slate gray. My dresser empty. My photographs missing. "Do you like it?" Jasmine's voice floated from behind. Sweet. Too sweet. The kind of sweet that coats poison. I turned. She stood in my doorway, arms folded, smile wide and empty as a porcelain doll's. We thought a fresh look would brighten the place. I swallowed slowly. "Where's my bed?" "In the storage shed," she said lightly. "Don't worry, it's safe. And you'll be much more comfortable in the guest room anyway. It's better for your back." A soft chuckle. "You know, at your age, at my age, like I was fading, like I was becoming a relic in my own home." The air shifted and Ethan appeared, hair messy, eyes heavy with guilt he tried to mask. "Dad, relax. It's just a room. We wanted to surprise you." Surprise. I stared at them both. My breath didn't shake. My voice didn't rise. But something inside me, something deep and quiet, tightened like a knot. They thought I'd nod, smile, step aside and let them swallow the home I poured my life into. They thought I was too old, too soft, too tired to push back. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, was that time doesn't weaken every man. Sometimes it sharpens him. Sometimes it turns patience into steel. I didn't storm. I didn't shout. I just stood there, every memory of Margaret, every nail I hammered into these walls burning beneath my skin. They had chosen the wrong man to move, and they were about to learn exactly why. They thought they were claiming a room. What they really did was declare war in the one place I swore to protect. And I hadn't even begun to fight back yet. For a long moment, no one spoke. The house felt different now, not silent, but listening, watching, as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what I'd do. Ethan cleared his throat first, shifting his weight like a boy caught stealing cookies instead of a grown man emptying his father's life out of a bedroom. "Dad," he tried again, voice softer. "It's still your house. We just thought we're a family. We should share space." Share. Funny word, that one. When Margaret was alive, sharing meant compromise. Respect. Asking, not assuming. But now it sounded like entitlement dressed up as generosity. I nodded once, slow and steady. "Where are my things?" Jasmine gestured vaguely down the stairs. "In the garage. It's all safe. Besides, those pieces were sentimental, not practical. We needed something modern. Modern. As if memories were outdated furniture that needed replacing." I didn't argue. I didn't even look at them. I simply walked past them, down the stairs, each step landing with a weight I hadn't felt in years. The garage door creaked as I opened it, an old familiar sound. But what waited beyond it wasn't familiar at all. My bed frame leaned against the cement wall, disassembled, pieces stacked like broken bones. Boxes labeled "Dad's stuff" sat beneath a shelf, dusty already, because they'd been here longer than just today. They'd done this days ago, maybe even while I was gone, laughing over paint cans while erasing pieces of my life. A photo frame lay cracked on top of a box, glass shattered. It was the picture from our 20th anniversary. A sunset behind us, Margaret's hand resting lightly on my chest, her eyes bright with a love that time never dimmed. I reached out, fingertips brushing the broken glass. It pricked, a small sting, but it was nothing compared to the ache crawling up my ribs. Behind me, their steps echoed. "See," Jasmine said lightly, as if she were giving me a tour of a storage unit and not the graveyard of my life. "Everything's accounted for. We didn't get rid of anything. You kept objects," I murmured, lifting the cracked photo carefully. "Not respect." Her smile faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. Ethan shifted, guilt flickering in his eyes like a candle in wind. "Dad, come on. It's not that bed was old. We figured you'd like the guest room better. You've always been simple." Simple. How small they thought I was. I turned toward them, holding the picture like a relic of a life they couldn't understand. "I trusted you with this house, with our memories, and you moved me like a misplaced box." "It's not that serious," Jasmine scoffed. "It's just a room." "No," I said quietly. "It was my room, my home, the last place in this world where your mother still felt close." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. Ethan rubbed his neck, his nervous tell since childhood. "Dad, don't make this dramatic. We were trying to help. Give you a space more suited for your stage of life." Stage of life. So that was it. They didn't see a man anymore. They saw a placeholder, a relic waiting to fade. My jaw tightened, but I didn't yell. Rage is loud. Authority is quiet. "Go upstairs," I said calmly. "I'll join you shortly." Jasmine opened her mouth to protest, but Ethan pulled her arm gently, sensing something she didn't. The shift in tide. They left, whispering in low tones, footsteps trailing back to the house I built with my bare hands. I stayed. I needed to breathe in this space where my life had been shoved like clutter. And as I stood there in the cold concrete room, surrounded by boxes labeled like afterthoughts, I knew something with deep clarity. They believed they held power now. But power doesn't come from taking a room. It comes from knowing what a man will do when you try to erase him. I lifted the photo, brushed the dust from Margaret's face, and whispered, "I won't let them bury what we built. Not in this house. Not in this lifetime." Upstairs, their voices flowed again. Light, careless, certain they'd won some silent battle. But they'd forgotten the most important rule of claiming territory. Never underestimate the man who built it. And I was just getting started. They thought they moved my furniture. They didn't know they'd awakened every stubborn bone in my body. And what I planned next would shake the ground beneath their clever little feet. I didn't rush back upstairs. I stayed in the garage long enough for the chill in the air to settle into my bones and sharpen my thoughts. Anger wanted to push me forward, storm in, demand answers. But anger is a blunt tool. Precision gets results. And I intended to be precise. I wiped a thumb across the photo frame again, collecting dust and the faint smear of old memories. Margaret always said I thought best when I was silent. "Still waters run deep, Walter," she'd whisper while brushing sawdust off my shoulders in the workshop. Thinking first is how a man wins battles. I wasn't planning a battle yet, but preparation, that was already happening. When I finally stepped inside, the warmth from the living room brushed over me. It should have felt comforting, familiar, like the countless evenings I'd spent reading by the fireplace with a cup of tea. Instead, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. A life decorated in polished marble and glass instead of oak and heart. Ethan sat on the new sofa, legs stretched out like he owned the place. Jasmine scrolled her phone, curled up in a plush white blanket that hadn't existed in this house 2 weeks ago. They looked like they belonged here, and I looked like the stranger. I didn't sit. I didn't need to. So, I began, voice steady. "Tell me the truth. When did you decide my room was yours?" Jasmine looked up first, lips already shaping a response like she'd rehearsed it. "It wasn't like that. We just wanted a space that felt ours. You were away, and it just made sense." "It made sense to you," I corrected. "Not to me." Ethan sat forward, rubbing his palms together. "Dad, you've always said you wanted us to feel welcome, like this is home for all of us. We were just taking initiative." "Taking initiative," I repeated. "Or taking possession?" A flicker of panic crossed his face. Subtle but there. That was the thing about guilt. It never stayed silent for long. "Come on," he muttered. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe you don't realize what you've done." Their eyes darted to each other. A silent conversation. Defensive. Worried. That was good. Worried people make mistakes. Mistakes reveal motives. I walked toward the kitchen, deliberately slow. My cane tapped softly on the hardwood. A cane I didn't actually need most days. But today it served a purpose. Let them think I was fragile. Fragile meant harmless. Harmless meant they wouldn't see the storm forming behind my calm eyes. I poured myself water, feeling Jasmine's gaze follow me. "The guest room," I said casually. "You prepared it for me?" "Of course," she replied quickly. Too quickly. "It's comfortable, you'll see." "I'm sure," I murmured. "Though it's curious. Why not wait for me to come home and discuss it?" Silence again. Heavy. Thick. Ethan finally exhaled. "Because we knew you'd overthink it. We just wanted to help without complications." Complications. Meaning questions. Meaning my opinion still mattered to them only when it made their lives easier. I didn't argue. Instead, I took a sip of water and set the glass down gently. "I appreciate the thought," I lied smoothly. "And I'll settle into the guest room for now." Jasmine brightened, relieved. Too relieved. "Good. See? We can all adapt." I nodded, turning toward the hallway. Adaptation. Yes, I could adapt. But adaptation isn't surrender. It's strategy. On my way to the guest room, I paused at the hall closet. My closet. I opened it. Empty. Not a jacket, not a boot. Everything cleared to make room for theirs. Even the top shelf, where Margaret's scarf had rested untouched for years, held a stack of towels Jasmine must have ordered in a fancy set. That scarf gone. Something tightened in my chest, slow and deep, like a rope pulling itself taut. Not pain. Resolve. I closed the door softly and walked into the guest room. Clean. Bland. It smelled faintly of jasmine reed diffusers. Probably her idea of making a place fresh. My suitcase sat neatly on the bed, untouched. At least they hadn't unzipped my life without me there. Yet, I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. Their voices drifted from the living room. "He'll get used to it," Ethan whispered. We just have to stay firm, Jasmine replied. The house needs to feel like ours too. He'll accept it eventually. Except, they didn't plan to share. They planned to take. And they thought I would simply fold. When the house settled into quiet hours later, I pulled a notebook from my bag. The one Margaret gave me. Brown leather. Worn edges. My ledger of life, budget notes, home repairs, thoughts, memories. I opened to a new page and wrote one line. They think I'm moving aside. They don't realize I'm taking inventory. Inventory not of belongings but of character. Their choices. Their priorities. The shift in their tone. Every little thing that proved this wasn't thoughtlessness. It was entitlement turning into ownership. I leaned back, calm, steady, sharp. They weren't villains. They were opportunists. And opportunists only win when the other side sleeps. I wasn't sleeping. I was learning. And now I knew the truth. They hadn't taken my room. They'd taken their first step toward taking my home. And that was a step they would come to regret. They thought reorganizing my life made them the new rulers of this house. They didn't realize I had just begun preparing for a quiet, calculated war, and I never lose the battles I don't announce. Night has a way of peeling masks off people. Silence makes truths louder. I lay in the guest bed longer than I intended, staring at the ceiling where the faint outline of new light fixtures cast unfamiliar shadows. This room wasn't mine, not by feel, not by memory. It was a polite exile disguised in fresh linens. I heard muffled voices from down the hall. Ethan's low rumble, Jasmine's sharper tone cutting through the air. They thought I was asleep. They thought old men slept early and deeply. They forget I built this house, every board and nail, and it carries sound like a confession booth. He won't fight it, Jasmine whispered. He's too passive. He barely reacted. Passive. She said it like a fact, like she was describing a man already defeated. Ethan hesitated. I don't know. He seemed different. He's old, she snapped softly. He'll adjust. And once we finish setting things up, her voice dropped too low for the next part, but I didn't need to hear it. Finish setting things up. Claiming ground one room at a time. Rewriting a home that wasn't theirs. I closed my eyes, not in defeat but in planning. The world believes older men lose their edge. They forget we sharpen in silence. When their footsteps faded and the house settled, I rose. I moved slowly, but not from stiffness, from intention. The guest room door creaked as I opened it just enough to hear if they stirred. They didn't. I walked down the hall to my old bedroom, their bedroom now. The door was closed. My hand hovered over the knob, not to enter, but to acknowledge something important. That space belonged to memories, and I would reclaim it, not with anger, with proof, with action. Downstairs, the kitchen light above the sink glowed dim, casting just enough light for me to navigate. I poured a glass of water and sat at the table, the small round one Margaret insisted on even after I offered to buy a bigger one. Small tables keep people close, she used to say. I missed her more tonight than I had in years. 12 minutes passed. I counted. Thinking makes time slow. Then I heard footsteps. Ethan. He padded down the stairs like a boy sneaking out after curfew. When he saw me, he froze. Dad? You're still up. I nodded. Just thinking. He rubbed the back of his neck, again with that old habit. Look, about earlier. I know it feels like a lot. We just wanted to make the place feel new. Fresh start and all. For who? I asked, voice calm. He looked at the floor, like he always did when truth cornered him. For all of us. A lie coded in good intentions. Ethan, I said gently, I open this home to you both, but I didn't hand over the deed. His head jerked up, surprised. There it was, the flicker of panic I'd seen in young boys who realized the ball they'd thrown was about to break a window. We're not trying to take over, he rushed. Then why didn't you wait to ask? He had no answer, and silence is often the most honest admission. I studied him, the child I raised alone, the boy with scraped knees and an oversized fishing hat, now a grown man swayed by comfort and a wife who confused ownership with influence. You still have a good heart, I said slowly, but you're letting someone else steer it. His jaw tightened. defensiveness, fear, shame. A storm brewing beneath skin that once held innocence. "I'm not a kid anymore," he muttered. "No," I agreed. "And grown men face consequences when they forget gratitude." He swallowed hard. "We're family." "Yes," I said. "Family doesn't erase boundaries. It honors them." A long beat stretched between us. Then, quietly, like a truth he didn't want but couldn't stop, "She just wants us to have stability." "And you think stability starts by destabilizing the man who built this roof for you?" His shoulders slumped. He didn't answer. He whispered, "I didn't think it would hurt you." "It didn't hurt me," I said softly. "It disappointed me. And that's worse." He flinched like those words were physical. "Good. Reality should sting sometimes." After a long pause, he nodded once. "I'll fix things." "Do it because it's right," I told him. "Not because you got caught." He looked up with eyes that, for the first time tonight, belonged to the son I remembered. But fear still lingered in them, like a shadow. He went upstairs slowly. His footsteps were heavier this time, the sound of a man realizing his choices had weight. I stayed at the table long after he disappeared down the hall. Then I reached for my notebook again and wrote another line. Their intentions matter less than their actions. And actions always reveal the truth. I closed it gently. No anger in my chest. Only clarity. This wasn't just about a room. It was about control, respect, and roots. And I do not uproot easily. I stood, turned off the kitchen light, and whispered into the quiet house. "You picked the wrong man to underestimate." The walls seemed to hear me, and I swear, the old wood felt like it exhaled with relief. Ethan may have felt guilt, but guilt doesn't stop ambition. And soon, I'd discover this wasn't a careless mistake. It was the beginning of a plan much bigger than a bedroom. Morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, painting the countertop gold. The smell of fresh coffee should have felt comforting, grounding. But today, it only sharpened my thoughts. I moved quietly, deliberate, the house creaking under my footsteps like it remembered who it truly belonged to. Ethan and Jasmine hadn't come downstairs yet. They were late risers, luxury of people who believed life owed them mornings without purpose. I enjoyed early hours. They felt honest, earned. The world is simpler when dew still clings to grass and no one's yet trying to take what isn't theirs. Halfway through my first cup, I heard light steps overhead. Not hurried, careful. Strategizing. Then Jasmine's voice drifted down the staircase, muffled but urgent, like she thought walls couldn't carry her ambition. "I told you, once we get everything in place, it'll be easier to convince him," she whispered sharply. I stilled. My hand froze mid-sip. "Convince me of what?" Ethan's reply was softer, worn by doubt. "Maybe we should slow down." "No," she hissed. "You heard him. He's already suspicious. We have to secure our future now." Secure our future. Interesting phrase. One used by conquerors, not caretakers. I set my cup down silently and listened. Truth always finds cracks to seep through. "You think he's just going to hand us the house when he's gone?" Jasmine continued. "You know what people like him do. Leave donations, give it to charity, or worse, leave it to some distant cousin or someone who didn't sacrifice years living here." Sacrifice. They spoke like they were guardians, as if living rent-free and slowly pushing me into corners was a noble burden. Ethan muttered, "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Your father is passive. He avoids conflict. If we make enough improvements, legally we can show he intended shared ownership. It'll be easier to transfer." There it was, their plan spoken plainly. Not a misunderstanding. Not a moment of poor judgment. The strategy. A quiet theft disguised as family duty. My blood cooled, not with rage but with precision. The same feeling I got years ago when fixing the roof during a storm. Every nail placed carefully because mistakes could cost the whole structure. They weren't here to live with me. They were here to outlive me. In my own house, without waiting for time to do its job. Something clattered upstairs. Ethan must have bumped into a dresser. Jasmine lowered her voice again, thinking silence upstairs meant silence everywhere. All he needs is a little nudge, she said. A suggestion that it's time to think about retirement homes later down the line. Once we've established we've been taking care of him, the house will be ours one way or another. Retirement homes. So they intended to remove me, not just my things. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Not from fear but from clarity. They weren't planning a future with me. They were planning a life after me, before I was gone. Ethan's voice cracked. He's still my dad. And he'll still be your dad when you inherit the house, she snapped. Unless you'd like to go back to scrambling for rent again. So that was the anchor, money. Stability bought with betrayal. Footsteps finally approached the stairs. I moved to the sink, rinsing my mug, posture relaxed, as though I had heard nothing. Because timing is as important as truth, and playing unaware was my first advantage. When they entered, Jasmine fixed a bright smile, the kind that never reached her eyes. Morning. I nodded politely. Coffee's fresh. Ethan's gaze flickered, guilt already gnawing. Good. Conscience makes thieves clumsy. Jasmine slid onto a bar stool, speaking casually. We were thinking of maybe reorganizing the pantry today. Make the kitchen flow better. Translation. Another space. Another claim. I smiled softly, not agreement but strategy, wearing a friendly face. We'll talk about that later, I replied. Right now, I'm going out for a bit. Oh? She asked, eyes narrowing. Where? Just errands, I said calmly. Sometimes a man needs space to think. Her smile faltered. Fear? No, not yet. Suspicion. She sensed shift, not threat. Good. Let her feel uneasy without knowing why. Ethan watched me longer than she did, searching my expression for anger or hurt. He saw neither, only what I wanted him to see. Quiet man. Still water. No storm in sight. But storms never announce themselves. They gather in silence and strike in certainty. When I stepped outside, the crisp air filled my lungs like truth filling an empty room. The porch boards groaned beneath my feet, greeting me like an old friend. I reached into my pocket, pulled out an old leather notebook, and wrote. They aren't waiting for time, they're trying to steal it. So I will take back control one quiet move at a time. I stood tall, spine straight, chin lifted toward the sky. They wanted to push me out slowly, room by room, decision by decision. But they forgot something. You don't push out the man who built the foundation. You only teach him how to reclaim it. They thought I didn't hear them. They thought they were ready to take what's mine. But now I knew their plan, and I had just begun forming mine. And mine would dismantle theirs without raising my voice once. I didn't drive far that morning, just down to the town square, where the pavement still smelled like early dew and the bakery woman always wiped flour on her apron before waving at me. Life outside my home still felt honest, untouched by ambition and quiet betrayal. I walked into the cafe and took my usual seat by the window. The same seat Margaret and I used to share on Saturday mornings. Back then, we'd sip coffee, talk about fixing porch rails, planting spring flowers, and what kind of pie she'd bake that week. Today, I wasn't thinking about pie. I was thinking about plans. I ordered black coffee and unfolded my notebook. The pen felt heavier than usual, not from weight, but from purpose. Plans written in ink carry more truth than promises spoken in air. I wrote 3 simple headings. What they want, what they believe, what they don't know. Under what they want, I wrote, the house, my perceived stability, my silence. Under what they believe, I am passive. I avoid conflict. I will not push back. Under what they don't know, I heard everything. I am planning. I never react, I respond. I am not alone. I tapped my pen lightly, thinking of the last line. I wasn't alone. Not truly. I had built a life outside of those walls. Relationships, trust, people who respected me not for what I owned, but who I was. People like Thomas, my lawyer of 25 years, friend of 30. People like Rose, my neighbor who still brought soup every winter. People like Maya, my niece who called weekly and would sooner fight a bear than see me mistreated. I had allies. They had assumptions. There is a difference. As I sat there, the doorbell jingled and someone chuckled behind me. Walter Hayes, a familiar voice boomed. If it isn't the man who can fix a roof and a broken heart with equal skill. I turned. Officer Harold Bennett, retired sheriff, friend, fishing partner, and a man who'd seen enough human nature to know when a storm was needed. He slid into the chair across from me without asking, because old friends don't ask about seats. They take them. You look like a man chewing on something heavy, he said, studying me with eyes that always saw a bit too much. Everything all right at home? Could have lied. Should have, maybe. But truth is armor, and I needed armor right now. They moved me into the guest room, I said quietly. Harold's brows lifted just a fraction. Not surprise, understanding. That's so? And now they're talking about shared ownership and planning for my future. The kind that ends with them deciding where I sleep. Permanently. His jaw tightened, just slightly. You need help? No, I said. Not yet. But I will need records. Proof. Quiet proof. He leaned back, tapping a finger on the table. I've got your back. You say the word. It wasn't a promise. It was a guarantee. Before leaving, he put his hand on my shoulder. People forget age is just years lived, not power lost. When I returned home an hour later, the driveway was quiet. The leaves rustled, the world peaceful. A perfect disguise. Inside, Jasmine sat at the kitchen island flipping through renovation magazines. When she saw me, her smile stretched. Too bright, too planned. You're back. We were thinking, maybe we could open up the dining room wall? Make it more open concept. Open concept. Funny how people like space when they're planning to fill it with themselves. We'll discuss changes later, I said gently. She blinked, caught off guard. I never denied her ideas before. That was the point. Ethan peeked from the living room, concern gnawing at him. His eyes searched mine again. Guilt growing deeper, spine bending under it. Good. Let the truth get heavy. Dad, he said hesitantly. We want you to feel comfortable with everything we do. Then stop doing things without me, I replied calmly. Jasmine's smile faltered like a candle hit by wind. Ethan swallowed hard. The tone had shifted. A tectonic shift they didn't yet understand. I walked to the cabinet, pulled out the deed folder. I kept the original and copies. Most men protect their wealth in banks. I protect mine in paper and principle. I tapped the folder once on the counter before placing it in full view. Their eyes locked on it. Not a threat. A reminder. This home has plans, I said softly. And I wrote them long before you moved in. Are you upset? Jasmine asked, voice too sweet, too careful. No, I said simply. I'm aware. Silence fell. Heavy. Factual. Undeniable. I didn't need to yell. I just needed to be still and watch them scramble to figure out what I knew. As I turned to leave the room, I added, by the way, don't make any financial decisions without talking to me first. I'll be adjusting things. Jasmine's grip tightened around her magazine. Ethan's breath hitched. Power had shifted. Not loudly, quietly, surgically, permanently. And I didn't need to move furniture to reclaim ground. I only needed to move intention. They wanted to take the house one room at a time. I just took back every inch of it without raising my voice. But the next thing I would discover would prove their ambitions ran far deeper than repainting walls. They wanted my life, not just my home. That evening, after the sun dipped behind the oak trees and the house settled into the kind of quiet that only comes before a storm, I sat alone in the living room. The fireplace flickered faintly. Not from a fire, but from the memory of one. Margaret always lit a fire at dusk. A home should glow at night, she used to say. Now the glow I felt was something colder, sharper, a quiet readiness. Ethan and Jasmine were upstairs, moving around softly. Too softly. People trying not to be heard often reveal more than they hide. They forgot these floors learned to speak long before they did. I waited. Patience carves paths where force fails. Footsteps. Whispering voices. A door closed. Then silence again. I rose and walked toward Ethan's study, once my office, now cluttered with his modern desk and Jasmine's planners. I didn't knock. It was my door, my house, And tonight I wasn't pretending otherwise. Inside, the desk light glowed over stacks of paperwork. Random clutter to an untrained eye, but a man who has built his life through sweat and effort learns to spot patterns like hunters spot tracks. And the biggest predator in this house wasn't me. Not yet. It was desperation. I sifted through envelopes and receipts, pretending to tidy but really hunting truth. Halfway through the stack, I found it. A loan document. $19,500 signed in shaky pen strokes. Except not by Ethan. And certainly not by Jasmine. By me. Or rather, a poor imitation of me. Forgery. I stared at the signature. My first name spelled right. Middle initial wrong. The last name slightly crooked, as if someone practiced but never mastered it. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake. Instead, everything in me stilled. Perfect stillness, the kind that comes right before a blade is sharpened. They hadn't just redecorated my life. They had started transferring pieces of it. Quietly, illegally. And this was the first crack in their story. A legal wound they thought I was too blind to notice. Jasmine's voice floated faintly from upstairs, laughing lightly about something inane. The kind of laugh people give when they believe the world is bending for them. I wondered how long she had practiced persuading Ethan that stealing from his father was planning for the future. I set the loan paper down gently and kept looking, because once you find one termite, you know the nest isn't far. And I found more. Credit card bills. Contractor estimates. A printed email thread about refinancing. Refinancing my home. Without my knowledge. My jaw didn't clench. A man only loses when he reacts without thinking. Instead, I reached into the bottom drawer, where I knew my old leather-bound lockbox still sat. They hadn't touched it. Why would they? They thought I was a sentimental old man who stored letters and memories, not leverage. Inside were deed copies, legal papers, insurance forms, everything Margaret and I built the future on. Documents filed carefully, protected carefully, earned honestly. I pulled out the original deed and placed it beside the forged loan agreement. Two worlds. One built with love, the other with greed. And that's when I heard it, a soft gasp, from the doorway. Jasmine stood there, arms crossed, eyes narrow. She wasn't expecting me here. She expected compliance, ignorance, softness. Instead, she found me calm, deliberate, and holding evidence. "What are you doing in here?" she asked coolly, though her voice quivered beneath the veneer. "Looking at my property," I replied. "And my name." Her eyes dropped to the forged document. Color drained from her face just a touch, but she recovered quickly, forcing a smile. "Oh, that's just... Ethan mixed up some paperwork. He's bad with forms." I met her eyes slowly. "And your handwriting, is it bad too?" A flicker. One crack in her polish. Her lips tightened. "We're trying to secure our future. You're acting like we're criminals." "You forged my name," I said simply. "That's not securing your future. That's stealing mine." Her confidence wavered. Then she straightened, mask snapping back on. "We've lived here. We've improved things. People will understand we've become part owners. And yet," I said quietly, "the law doesn't run on your feelings." She blanched, but only for a second. "You wouldn't do that to your own son." "You already did this to me," I answered. Silence. Sharp. Cutting. Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was still in control. "Walter, you don't want conflict. You never have. Let's handle this peacefully. Just let us help with things moving forward." There it was, the pivot. When manipulation starts losing its footing, it always reaches for diplomacy it doesn't deserve. I closed the folder. "Jasmine, I don't need help. I need honesty. And you came into my home with neither." Her jaw clenched so tight I could see it tremble. Then she turned and walked away, footsteps stiff, controlled, but breaking. Ethan wasn't with her. He hadn't witnessed this. And when someone is being led by deception, truth needs its own time to sink in. I put everything back exactly where it was, except the forged loan. That I slipped into my coat pocket. I didn't rush, didn't slam doors or raise my voice. Because nothing unsettles the guilty more than a quiet man holding evidence. As I turned off the light and walked out of the study, the house creaked. Not with age, but with anticipation. They believed they were 3 steps ahead. They didn't know I had just stepped onto the only path that mattered, the legal one. Quiet men don't lose. We document. We prepare. And then we strike, not with fury, but with truth. They forged my name and thought I'd never know. Now I had proof and patience. But the next move wasn't mine alone. Because help was already on its way. And when family returns, it changes everything. Morning came wrapped in a thin gray mist. The kind that settles low and quiet, as though even the sky is holding its breath. Fitting, I thought. A quiet morning for a quiet war. I moved through the kitchen like I always did, slow, steady, familiar. Ritual is a powerful thing. It reminds you who you are when others try to rewrite you. I boiled water, ground coffee by hand, and let the aroma fill the room. Not store-bought pods. Not automated. My way. Halfway through my first sip, I heard the front door. Not the soft shuffle of Ethan's loafers or the impatient click of Jasmine's heels. No, this was lighter, brisk, sure. And when I turned, she was standing there in the entryway, breath fogging faint white, hair tied back, eyes sharp enough to cut through a lie at 20 paces. My daughter, Claire. Not my daughter-in-law. My daughter. My blood. The one who never asked for a thing except honesty. Dad. She set her duffel bag down and pulled me into a hug that felt like oxygen after weeks underwater. You should have called sooner. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. You drove all night. She shrugged. Had a feeling you needed me. And just like that, the balance in the house shifted, not loud, but unmistakable. Ethan and Jasmine didn't know it yet, but the tide had just changed. Claire pulled back, scanning my face. You all right? I am now. She nodded once, satisfied, then glanced around. They home. Upstairs. Her eyes hardened, the same way her mother's used to when she caught someone lying or found a bill that didn't add up. Claire never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Truth flowed through her like electricity. Quiet, but lighting every dark corner it touched. What did they do? She asked, voice low. I didn't answer with words. Just reached into my coat and handed her the folded loan document. She read it once, twice. Her jaw tightened. They forged your signature? She murmured. Yes. And they're still sleeping under your roof? Yes. A slow exhale. The calm kind. The dangerous kind. You told me once, she said softly, that you built this house so your family would always have a place to come home to. I did. She met my eyes. You didn't build it so they could take it from you. That was Claire, gentle heart, iron spine. Margaret in spirit and steel. She placed the paper on the island, smoothing it like she was preparing evidence in court. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder of her own. You're not the only one who documents things, she said with a faint, razor-sharp smile. I printed records of every text, every call, and every message Ethan sent me, including the one last year asking about the house deed. A beat, clarity clicked into place. They'd been planning longer than I knew. The stairs creaked. We turned as Ethan appeared, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He froze when he saw Claire. Claire? What are you? She didn't flinch, didn't offer a hug. Just looked at him with the steady disappointment only a sibling can carry without speaking it. You forged Dad's name on a loan? His face drained. Hands twitched. Breath caught in throat. He looked caught because he was... It wasn't, Jasmine said. Stop. Her voice cut air like glass. You don't get to hide behind your wife. Own your choices. He swallowed hard. Shame flickered in his eyes. Real shame, not the kind that pleads innocence. Claire, I didn't think it'd hurt anything. I figured we'd pay it back before anyone noticed. She shook her head slowly. You didn't think. You took. His shoulders sagged. Not the slump of defeat. The slump of recognition. Truth had a way of stripping men bare. Then Jasmine entered. Silk robe, hair perfect, expression tight like a bowline pulled too hard. Oh, she said, voice brittle. You're here. Yes, Claire answered. I am. And you're done. The words didn't rise. They didn't shout. They landed final and immovable. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. You don't control this house. No, Claire said, stepping aside so I stood fully in view. He does. And you forgot that. Silence sat heavy, not uncomfortable, but enlightening. A shift. A line drawn clean and sharp between taking and protecting. I turned to Ethan, my voice soft but steady. Son, you still have a chance to choose the right side. But choices have consequences. His eyes glistened, pride cracking under guilt. I'll fix it, he whispered. Dad, I promise. I just lost my way. I nodded. Then find it again. Jasmine scoffed. What, you're siding with her? He didn't look at her. Not once. And that's when I knew the spell of influence had started to break. Claire rested a gentle hand on my shoulder. No drama. No fireworks. Just family, real family, taking a stand. There are moments in life when tides turn and homes breathe again. This was that moment. But apologies don't erase plans, and Jasmine wasn't finished. The forgiveness Ethan sought, she wasn't coming quietly for. The next day would expose the full truth, and test how far she was willing to go to claim what was never hers. The morning after Claire arrived felt different. Like the walls themselves stood taller. Stronger. A house knows when its defenders return. Ethan hovered in the kitchen, anxious, stirring sugar into coffee he wouldn't drink. His movements jittery, like a man waiting for verdict. Claire sat calmly at the table, spine straight, pen in hand, notebook open. She looked like someone auditing truth itself. And then there was Jasmine. She came downstairs dressed impeccably, makeup done, posture sharp. The kind of polish you wear when you think appearances alone can enforce authority. But eyes? Eyes betray. Hers flickered, not fear yet, but disruption. She'd lost balance, and she knew it. Oh, good, she drawled. Family meeting time, I see. Claire didn't look up. Just clarity time. Ethan cleared his throat. Jazz, I think we need to. No, she didn't look at him, didn't even blink. We don't need to justify ourselves. We live here too. Remember? Claire closed her notebook softly, soft, but it felt like the room exhaled. You live here. You do not own here. Jasmine smirked, and it was the smirk of someone who still believed she held secret cards. Well, ownership is flexible, legally speaking. And once we've invested enough into renovating, I cut in quietly. Renovations done without consent do not equal ownership. She turned, lips tightening. You're assuming there's no legal argument. Ethan's spoon clinked against his mug, his nerves singing louder than his voice. Jazz, maybe stop. No, she snapped. I'm not going to tiptoe around his feelings because he wants to hold on to an old house. It's not an old house. Claire's voice sliced clean. It's our family legacy. I looked at Jasmine then. Not with anger, but with something far heavier. Clarity. You want security, I said. You want stability. But stability you take is not stability, it's theft. She crossed her arms. I call it building a future. On someone else's foundation, Claire murmured. That's not building. That's squatting with ambition. Jasmine flushed, mask cracking. You think we don't deserve a future? We work too, you know. Claire didn't blink. You work at remodeling narratives, not reality. Ethan closed his eyes, as if bracing for impact. Jasmine stepped back, trying to gather her confidence. You can't just throw us out. That's illegal. Tenants have rights. I nodded slowly. Tenants do. Guests do not. Her breath hitched. We're family. Family. Funny word. Used like a key when convenient. Like a weapon when desperate. You were welcomed as family, I said, voice calm as still water. Not positioned as heirs by force. Jasmine's jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. Pushing away the only people who care enough to live here and help. Claire leaned forward, voice low, deliberate. Helping and hijacking are not the same thing. Silence dropped heavy. Jasmine's eyes shifted, calculating, cornered. You think because you came here waving legal papers and big sister attitude that this changes anything? She sneered. No, Claire replied. The forged loan document already changed everything. Ethan winced. Jasmine froze. Her face went pale. That was the one truth she couldn't spin. Finally, she exhaled, brittle, teetering on collapse. Fine. We made mistakes. But it was for us. For our future. A future doesn't need to be stolen, I said softly. It can be built. Earned. She looked at Ethan then, eyes pleading, desperate to pull him back into her gravity. Ethan, say something. He stared at the table. I chose wrong. I let greed talk louder than loyalty. And there it was, the moment she realized her ally was no longer in her corner. She scoffed, laugh sharp and shaking. Of course. The moment Daddy gets another child to back him, you fold. Claire didn't flinch, didn't bite. This isn't teams, Jasmine. This is truth. Jasmine's chest rose rapidly. So what now? You kick us out? You think you'll feel good about that? No, I said. I won't feel good. I'll feel right. She opened her mouth, ready to fire another line. But I held up a hand. I won't throw anyone on the street. But living here is no longer an option. Choices have consequences. You made yours. Her voice thinned. You can't just decide that. I didn't, I said. You did the moment you planned to take what wasn't yours. Claire slid a set of printed forms across the table. Housing options. Short-term rentals. Places near work. Jasmine stared at them like they were eviction papers because in her world, they were. Ethan spoke, voice low but steady for the first time. We'll leave. I'll pack. Jasmine's head snapped toward him. We. He blinked. Hurt flickered. We're married. But I won't watch you disrespect my dad again. Her face stiffened. The power she'd once held shattered. So you're choosing them over me? No, he said. I'm choosing the version of me I'm not ashamed of. That landed. Truth always does. Jasmine's expression crumpled. Not in heartbreak, but in disbelief that her hold had slipped. She turned to me, voice shaking not with sorrow, but with fear disguised as defiance. You're going to regret this. I looked at her. Not cruel, not angry, just certain. No, I said. I stopped regretting when I stopped staying silent. She stormed upstairs. Ethan followed slowly. Claire exhaled, shoulders lifting from a weight she didn't show until now. You handled that well, she murmured. No, I replied. I handled it necessary. We sat there a moment, quiet, the home breathing easier. Then Claire reached across the table and put her hand on mine. You didn't lose your son, she said softly. He just had to find the ground he stands on. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something warm in my chest. Not victory, not triumph, peace. But peace is never the end of a story, only the beginning of the next chapter. They agreed to leave. But leaving doesn't always mean accepting defeat. And Jasmine wasn't finished trying to claw back control. The day they packed their bags would bring one final test. One that would reveal who truly belonged in this house. Fog, fire. They spent 2 days packing. 2 days of boxes sliding across hardwood. Doors opening and closing. The rustle of ambition shrinking into cardboard. Funny how fast a takeover dissolves when truth steps into the room. Claire and I didn't hover. We didn't gloat. Quiet dignity wins wars louder than shouting ever could. Ethan packed methodically. T-shirts folded like apologies. Shoes placed neatly like regret. Jasmine packed differently. Fast, sharp, slamming drawers, stuffing clothes like she was wrestling the home itself. The house felt heavier, but not with sadness. More like the weight a tree feels before a storm ends. A settling, a reclaiming. On the third morning, rain tapped the windows, steady and cleansing. I sat in my chair near the fireplace with fresh logs burning this time. Margaret's rule. A home should glow when people are leaving or returning. Felt fitting. Ethan came downstairs first, rolling a suitcase. He didn't look broken, he looked awake. Humbled, but standing straighter than I'd seen in years. Dad, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I closed my notebook and met his eyes. I know, and that matters. He swallowed, voice rough. Thank you for not giving up on me. I nodded. A house endures storms. So does family. But both need repairs when damage is done. His eyes glistened. I'll earn back your trust. You've already started, I said. And he had. Guilt may have brought him to truth, but choice was what made him stay there. Then came Jasmine. She didn't carry her luggage. Ethan followed behind her with it. She wore a coat too expensive for her mood. Chin high, eyes cold, pride standing where humility refused to. So this is it? She said, voice syrup thick and edged with steel. We walk out and you all act like you're heroes for throwing us out? No one is throwing you, Claire replied from beside me. You walked the moment you forged his name. Jasmine snorted. Oh please, you think you won? You think you protected him? The world doesn't hand out medals for keeping old men like antiques in glass cases. I didn't flinch. Her words were designed to cut, to reclaim control through cruelty. But cruelty is a dull blade. It only wounds the hand holding it. I stood slowly, not for intimidation, but for presence. You could have had a home, I said softly. Instead, you tried to take a house. And there it was, truth so simple it cracked the air. Her jaw twitched. Rage flared, not wild, but contained, the dangerous kind fueled by entitlement denied. You'll regret this, she whispered. When you're alone and old and... Claire stepped closer, calm as a winter lake. He won't be alone. But loneliness is a punishment you've already built for yourself. Jasmine blinked. The truth hit her. But instead of shattering, it hardened into bitterness. She turned to Ethan. We don't have to leave. You don't have to do this. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. The room held its breath. Then he gently placed her coat in her hands. Yes, he said quietly. We do. She stared at him, betrayal skating across her features. You're choosing them over me. No, he said, voice steady. I'm choosing right over wrong. Her face cracked. Not with remorse, but disbelief that her influence slipped through her fingers. Pride can't understand correction. She stormed toward the door, but paused just before leaving, voice sharp. Final. This isn't over. It is, I replied gently. You just don't like the ending. She swallowed fury and walked out into the rain. Ethan lingered, eyes heavy with learning. I'll check in soon, he said. I'll make this right. I know you will. He stepped outside, closing the door softly behind him. The house exhaled. The rain softened. Silence settled, not empty, but clean. A silence earned. Claire placed her hand on my shoulder, warm, grounding. You okay? I stared at the door, the echoes of footsteps fading. Yes, I said. Better than okay. Because peace isn't quiet, it's clarity. And today clarity had won. We sat by the fire a while, letting warmth settle, letting walls remember safety again, letting roots dig deeper where they belonged. After a time, Claire spoke. What now? I looked at the living room, the photographs, the wood grain I had sanded myself, the home stitched with years of love and sorrow and laughter. Now, I said, we live, and we protect, and we choose the ones who choose us. She smiled, soft and real. Outside, rain gave way to faint light, just enough to hint at blue sky returning. Storms don't last forever. Neither do false intentions. Some homes aren't taken. They're defended. Quietly, steadily, completely. I picked up the forged paper one last time, then set it in the drawer. Not to hide it, but to remember. Not all battles need noise. Some are won in stillness, with truth, patience, and an unshakable spine. And as the fire crackled and the house stood tall around us, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. They came to claim my legacy, but I reclaimed myself instead. They're gone, for now. But victory isn't the end. Peace must be protected. And just when I thought the storms had passed, someone else would knock on my door soon. And not everyone who knocks comes with good intentions.